FPL Gameweek 21 team selection on the FPL Joe YouTube channel. Today we'll be recapping Gameweek 20 and then moving on to Gameweek 21, where I've got a ton of transfers planned for the coming weeks. So 60 points all out for Gameweek 20, a massive success by all accounts, and my first move into the top 100k, going up from 123k to 82k. And who else to start with but with Thiago, scoring a hat-trick in Gameweek 20 for 17 points, all of which were from open play. He registered 6 shots in total, and he accumulated almost 2 XG. So without a doubt, for 17 points at a 30% effective ownership, Thiago is the MVP for my team this week. We can't forget about his Brentford teammate Collins. Collins scored a 10-pointer, having scored a goal and assisting one of Thiago's goals. He's actually been on fire in the last 5 games, scoring 35 points, averaging 7 per game. In Game Week 20, he was also 1 away from DEFCON and conceded in the 91st minute, costing him 3 points in total. This could easily have been a 15-pointer, but I'm still incredibly happy with 10 and very happy with the pick. Brentford generally have looked fantastic recently, and I'm very happy to have that double up going forwards. So now a bit more disappointingly, let's move on to the flops. And we can't discuss flops without looking at the Arsenal triple up I've got of Raya, Timber and Saka. The 3 of them combined for only 8 points in Game Week 20, while some of the key alternatives, Gabriel and Rice, combined for 26 points, Rice scoring a brace and Gabriel scoring a goal. Gabriel also effectively wiped the clean sheet from Arsenal when he gave away the ball in the 10th minute. He would then go on only a few minutes later to score a goal as the ball fell to him and he took an admittedly pretty good shot. Saka on the other hand was on the bench for most of the game, only coming off for an assist and a 4-pointer, while Rice went on to score 2. And then in a similar vein, we've got to move on to the Newcastle assets. Chow pulled off what is becoming quite a common 17-point haul for defenders in the 2025-26 season. This comes from the combination of getting a clean sheet, a goal, DEFCON and 3 bonus points. Bruno on the other hand scored a late goal while Gordon was off the pitch, racking up extra bonus points and just narrowly missing DEFCON as well. On the other hand, Hall and Gordon were subbed at the 60th minute. This did mean that Hall's clean sheet was locked in, but given that at this point he was on 0.4 expected assists, he really could have gone on to do more if he'd been on the pitch. To compound things, Gordon had a goal ruled out for offside earlier. And the final group of underperformers is of course the Manchester City assets. We're looking at the last 6 games for some of their key assets, starting with Haaland, who's had 3 blanks in a row, despite generating over 1 XG in that period. Foden, who's had 4 blanks in a row, despite generating 1.8 XGI over that period, and O'Reilly, who's been 2 minutes away from a clean sheet twice in a row now. In Game Week 19, he was subbed at the 58th minute, and in Game Week 20, he conceded 1 minute before the full-time whistle. Cherki has been looking pretty great, but it's mostly assists that you'll be getting if you buy him. He's also managed to get DEFCON in those last 2 games, which is pretty nice. He's a solid mid-priced midfield asset and a third City attacker if that's what you're looking for. So there's been some very unlucky variants this game week for Arsenal and Newcastle, but it has been hugely rewarding sticking with the Brentford double up. And with that, let's move on to Game Week 21. So I've actually got 2 transfers that are locked in already, having gone early on Saturday evening to beat some price changes. The first one was always going to be Gabriel in, and for that I've chosen to move O'Reilly out. O'Reilly's minutes will likely be a bit better with City suffering 2 backline injuries in the previous game. However, with Aït-Nouri back from AFCON soon and the goal threat not really being there, as well as the DEFCON not really being there, it's quite hard to justify O'Reilly for the amount of money that he takes up. There's also a valid question about whether Brighton at home, which is City's fixture, is actually better than Liverpool at home, which is Arsenal's fixture. Well, having a look at the clean sheet odds, which are provided by 11FI's model, Arsenal's defence is simply in a league of its own. In the case of this specific game, I could quite easily see Arsenal-Liverpool going 1-0 or 2-0, likely in Arsenal's favour. Despite Brighton at home definitely being the easier fixture than Liverpool at home, they're actually given the better chance to score this week. So ultimately, there's a much higher upside with Gabriel. There is the opportunity for O'Reilly to punish this move, but I feel it's worth the risk, and I don't want to go another game week not owning Gabriel. So that leaves me on negative 0.3 in the bank with 4 Arsenal assets, so there's an extra move required to facilitate this. Looking at the upcoming fixtures, the clear team to target is Chelsea. They've got an incredible fixture run between Game Week 24 and 27, but even decent fixtures up until that point. Annoyingly, I'm actually stuck with Mark Guiu due to some poor planning on the wild card. I've only got room for 2 other Chelsea players unless I'm able to move him to Mane of Wolves, but this would be a luxury move. The main options therefore are Sanchez, Chalobah, Palmer and Enzo Fernandez. I can't afford Palmer yet as a result of Gabriel's price rises in recent weeks. I'm also hoping to go all in on the Arsenal defensive triple up. I'm backing them to come good against their expected numbers eventually, and I feel like backing Arsenal to get clean sheets is not the most out there choice. So ultimately, I've made the choice to go Saka to Enzo. This also provides 3.5 million in the bank, and it's important therefore to look a little bit further and see what we'll be doing with that. So moving on to Game Week 22, I'll be starting with subbing Collins for Lacroix. These 2 players rotate extremely well in the coming weeks, and they're both great assets, so I'll be really happy to have going forwards. With United's good fixtures now over, it'll be time to move Cunha over, and Palmer will eventually come into the team. Bruno might be back by this point, but I don't want to buy before the City and Arsenal fixtures. And And as for Palmer, he actually played 90 minutes versus City. I'm hoping that the new manager gives him some more creative freedom, and he might also get a glimpse of his former capabilities, especially versus some of the weakest opposition available in the coming weeks. So then moving on to Game Week 23, I'll again be rotating Lacroix and Collins, and now that Newcastle's good fixtures are over, I can move over to Cielo, who plays West Ham and Burnley back to back. This also frees up a load of funds, which leads on to Game Week 24. This will be the final swap of Collins and Lacroix before transferring Gordon to Bruno Fernandes. He's expected to be back a little bit before this, but it'll be likely reduced minutes versus Burnley if he does play, and then possible starts against City and Arsenal, but in tough fixtures. We can also use this time to assess the injury impact on minutes and performance, and if he is fit enough to bring in, he'll be ready for a good run of fixtures. So that wraps up the future planning, so let's move back to Game Week 21 to discuss captaincy. Looking at predicted points courtesy of FPL Review and Fantasy Football Hub. So there are actually a couple of good options this game week for captaincy. We've got Haaland versus Brighton, Cunha versus Burnley, Gordon versus Leeds, and Thiago versus Sunderland. I'll start by ruling out Thiago. Sunderland have been great defensively this season, although admittedly a little bit worse away from home, but Thiago's already a differential at around 30% effective ownership, or maybe a little bit higher now that people have brought him back in. I'm also going to be ruling out Gordon. There's still some minutes uncertainty there, and with Leeds unbeaten in 7 games, this is far from an easy fixture. Cunha could be good, but there's still a bit too much uncertainty for me this week. The first question is whether Bruno and Mount will be back. If so, Cunha is likely to be off all set pieces, but he will likely receive some better chances. We've also got to ask whether Amarim's departure will be good or bad for Cunha's output, and also what the impact of Fletcher's temporary appointment will be on that. It's also worth mentioning that based on his effective ownership, he's still a differential even without the captaincy. So that leaves just Haaland, and that's who I'm going with. He's been in pretty poor form recently, and he's missed a couple of good chances as well, but we still can't rule him out. Brighton have been defensively quite poor in recent weeks, and with City slipping in the title race, they really need to catch up, which has only been amplified after that last minute draw to Chelsea. So therefore, Cunha's going to get the vice captaincy. Burnley may well sit deep in this fixture, and it will likely be up to Man United to break them down. I'm hoping that with the new management, it'll introduce a little bit of structural freedom, as well as a bit of chaos and uncertainty, which could help as well. And that wraps up my Game Week 21 team selection. Drop a comment with any questions that you need answering for your team in Game Week 21, and I'll respond with my thoughts before the deadline. And with that, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe will go a huge way in supporting this new channel, and I'll be back to prepare for Game Week 22 shortly. Best of luck, and fingers crossed for another green arrow.